Hi, this is Mason Williams, celebrating 20 years of Retrospectives with John Broughton on 3SER Casey Radio.
Just to begin, when do you recall music first playing an important role in your life? When did it start to take over?
When I was very young, like really young, like 5 or 6, my father was overseas in Okinawa during World War II, and I was living with my grandmother, and my mother and I were living there, but my mother had a younger sister that was crazy about music, and she played records night and day, and most of it was country music, but there was some pop music too. And so I was, just around her, she was there getting ready to go on dates and just listening to music all day, like young teenagers do. And so I listened to all that music over and over and over. And so I think she was very important in, exposing me to a certain brand of music. And one of the things I realized was that seeing how much she liked it was a big part of my interest in it. She seemed to be so consumed with it emotionally, almost swooning sometimes and dancing around and just getting caught up in it. So I thought, boy, there must be something to this, so I'm going to check it out. And would listen to her all day. And I watched her. I was, like I say, 5 or 6 years old, and one day I watched her put a record on the big record player in the living room and saw how she worked the machine. And when she was gone one day, I went in and turned on the record player and put the needle on the record and played it over and over and over. And it was a song called Amor. Amor, amor, la da da dee, la da da da, something like that. I'd have to think about the melody again. I have to find the right key, I guess. Maybe I can remember it. Amor, amor, amor. These words divine, that I adore you, something like that. I'd have to look that one up. And although you'd think it would be indelible, being the first. And I'll remember that melody before we quit, so you can paste that in the right place.
No problem.
If you will.
I believe there was a period of time there where you were heading towards a career in insurance. Is that right?
Yeah, I was going to be in high school. I had an after-hours job working for an actuary, and mostly he would do computations on an old like an adding machine, but it was a multiplier, and which was a kind of a new machine in 1956, I guess. But I would write out all these numbers, and I just kept, they were doing very well, and so I thought, well, I like math, and I thought maybe this would be an interesting thing to think about doing. And my father always kept saying, what are you really going to do? You're not going to fool around with music and stuff like that, or you're going to get a real job, aren't you? So I was thinking, yeah, maybe I would. That didn't pan out, but anyway, when I went to L.A. in the September of 1956 it was, I was working at an insurance company in downtown L.A., and of course actuaries are a big deal around insurance companies, and so I was starting to study to take the test. There was 8 tests that you took, and they had to do with all kinds of things, and the first one was vocabulary, and boy, a lot of sort of math and business words I never heard of, but it was a great exercise and forced me to enlarge my vocabulary, and a thing I would recommend to everybody. Amor, 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 these words divine, mean I adore you. See, there it is.
You got it.
So those melodies, they're buried under layers of something. So, and isn't that funny?
Yeah.
How you just have to think about them for a second before they pop back
come
in
back.
your head. And And it was in L.A. that I decided I would study music. In high school, I always sang in the choir. I was a kind of a natural singer, so they liked to have me in the choirs because I had a good voice. I didn't read music, but I could copy anybody next to me, like if it was a tenor or a baritone part or whatever it was. And I wasn't afraid to sing out, so they like to have strong voices. And I'm kind of a natural singer from that sense because I sang along with everything on the radio. And I didn't really realize that, I just sang in this same register as everybody I was hearing, so I sang a lot of falsetto stuff like, "Oh, yes, I'm the great pretender, pretending that I'm doing well." All those kinds of songs. And so girl or boy, it didn't matter. It was kind of hard for me to sing as low as Tennessee Ernie Ford on 16 tons or something like that. But I sang along with all of them and learned all those songs, and consequently became what I would say is a natural singer from singing along with the radio.
Tell us about
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Wayfarers Trio, how that all came together.
Let's see. I did put together kind of a pop group in high school in my junior and senior year, and we sang, we sang a tune, the Witchcraft and Work With Me Annie, all those sort of. They were called race records, believe it or not, back in Oklahoma where I grew up. And what they meant is that it was the black music scene, and boy, they were so popular. Cherry, cherry pie. All those great songs.
Oh, yes.
And I learned all of those, and would just sing along with the radio, especially if you were in the car. And I was kind of shy, so I didn't really sing in public, although in my senior year I did sing in front of the whole student body in an assembly, and I sang Unchained Melody, which I knew. And I don't know how well I did, but at least I stepped out in front of the crowd, and I remember it being a terrifying experience. And one of the things I might say now is that, I sing now the way I wished I could have sung back then. So I'm actually kind of exploring the philosophical idea that your beginnings are your destiny.
Mm.
So I'm going back and singing all those songs I wished I could sing well back then. Now, why not?
Why not, indeed? Yeah.
And I'm having fun doing it because now I'm relaxed and I have know my way around in the music, and I'm singing stuff in falsetto and my natural voice, and so I'm really enjoying singing these days. Your beginnings are your destiny, and this is working out well for me. Okay, so and the Wayfarers was the Kingston Trio came along, and so a friend of mine and I started singing songs together, and then this other guy came on the scene, and we formed a trio, and we just sang all those Kingston Trio things. But also, one of the guys this Bill Cheatwood, friend of mine, his father was a folk song collector, and man, just had all kinds of books, the Alan Lomax books, everything you could ever imagine. And so I got a first-class education in folk music from Bill and his father, and learned some very obscure things too. So it wasn't just Kingston Trio; it was a great mix of folk music, the real body of work, or the Kingston Trio takes on it. And two things I did. I'd do things like I'd learn every song on a Burl Ives record, or I would pick. I remember picking the Alan Lomax songs of North America, folk songs of North America.
Ah, yes.
I learned every song in the book, so I was pretty diligent.
In there also was a group called the Hootenairs. Can you tell us about them?
the Hootenairs well, I just kept going. Well, folk music was really nice because it was more storytelling, and I was studying music in college now, but I didn't know how to read music very well, and so it kept me from doing opera and things like that. And I was too shy anyway. Didn't know my way around. So and didn't have any experience with theatrics, so I wouldn't be able to act. And even to this day, I don't act. And I like to use the phrase, I'm one of those ultimate egotists who never wants to be anybody but himself. So, no acting so far, and probably never will be. And so, although you do tend to act when you sing because you're communicating, and so
that's right.
Even though it's just a narrative, if you're smart, you're trying to convey the lyric in a way that has more meaning than just going through the motions. And so I was in the Navy Reserve and had to go on active duty at one point because that was the deal. You after 2 or 3 years of being in school or whatnot, at some point you had to go on active duty for 2 years, and so I ended up having to go on active duty in November of '61, and I was sent to San Diego, California, at the Amphibious Forces Base, which is in Coronado, which is a little subdivision there of San Diego. And fortunately, there was a big music scene, still is today. San Diego is a great town for music, lots of music, and the whole Mexican population has a big impact on the town. They love music in a very special way, and their music is always so intriguing. It's beautiful, and even the saddest songs are kind of happy. You have to say that they're one of the happiest cultures of all, and their music expresses that. And so I got to flesh out being a solo folk singer in San Diego, but even then I joined up with some friends, and that was the Hootenairs. And it was Ed Douglas on bass and John and Marilyn Powell. She played the hammered dulcimer and sang really well, and John played guitar, and I played guitar and banjo, 12-string and banjo. So there's a phone ringing in the background here, but it'll hear that. So anyway, that's how the Hootenairs happened, and I was pretty much a lonesome folk singer after the Hootenairs. I'd have to look at my list of things I did. Maybe you can remind me, but anyway, I sure enjoyed the Hootenairs because not only was San Diego a vibrant community to play in, lots of places to play, but a lot of friends to sing and play with, and so those were. And I started writing songs during that period.
Okay.
I had written a few things before that, but that's really when I got into writing songs. Was I would say in 1961, right. And even though I'd written a couple of them earlier than that. And one of the things, I was in the Navy, and one of the things is you're on watch. Sometimes 8 hours at night, all by yourself, and just waiting for something that never happens. And so if you make your rounds, make your phone calls, or whatever you have to do, you've got all that time to yourself. So it was great to practice or work on song lyrics or write in my journals or whatever. So in one sense, the Navy was an interesting time to myself.
Yeah.
And drank a lot of bad coffee, I'd say that. I didn't. It would sit on the burner all day, and man, about 3 o'clock in the morning, it was pretty stiff. Anyway, so it was a chance to, just. I don't think I was very good in the beginning, and I realized I had limitations as a songwriter. I think one of the problems was I was interested in poetry, and I think when I started writing songs, I got the whole world of poetry mixed up with lyrics, and they're not necessarily compatible. They're really two different things. And so the first love songs I wrote were real maudlin, sappy stuff, and I just moved on to comedy and instrumental music. That seemed to be what I was better at, and one of the reasons I think I did well at those is they're more abstract, and so I admire people who can write love songs. There are Beth Nielsen Chapman, man, you ought to listen to some of her music.
Oh, she's great.
Just
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
A great lyricist, and I mean, she'll make you cry. It's wonderful. And but I just don't have that knack, and have never pursued it. Although I can do it, but somehow I kept poetry. I wrote love poetry, but I didn't write love songs too much. Although I did try, but I don't think any of them really succeeded.
Now,
I started writing instrumental music about that time. In '62, I wrote my first instrumental tune called $13 Stella. And it was a kind of a folk blues kind of thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we never got to see the Smothers Brothers on television down here in Australia, but we're certainly aware of them. How did your association with them begin?
Let's see. After I got out of the Navy, I went back to Oklahoma City and started to go to school and enrolled in Oklahoma City University. And then I got an offer to be a folk singer at a club in Denver they call the Exodus, and was supposed to be gone for about a week, and it ended up being 2 weeks. And then I just thought, well, I'll go to school later, and so I just hit the road basically and became a folk singer. And that was in '63, and then in '64 I moved to L.A. and lived with my artist friend Ed Ruscha, and actually hooked up with a publisher named Davon Music. Dave Hubert was the guy's name, and started writing songs and thinking about writing songs, in a Hollywood sense or in a recording industry sense. And so I was in L.A. in '64 and '65 and started playing the folk clubs there, the Ice House and the Troubadour. And, the big acts would play the Troubadour, the Smothers Brothers and Josh White and Nina Simone. I saw her there. Man, what a thrill she was. And Bud and Travis, all kinds of folk singing acts and also cabaret sort of acts. So it was quite the place to... And the Ice House, too, was these same folk acts. And so Tommy Smothers' sister was a waitress at the Troubadour, which was on Santa Monica and Doheny. And later on became a big rock club, but then it was a folk music and a kind of a cabaret act. And one day Tommy said, well, I'm looking for some new material, and is there anybody that you see down there that's got kind of off-the-wall stuff, comedy stuff? And she said, yeah, there's this one guy's got these weird poems and writes off-the-wall songs called Mason Williams. And so she was the conduit leading me to Tom, and I went up to his house one day. I don't remember exactly. This was in '65 probably. And we hung out, and I played him some of my stuff, and a week later I backed them up on an album called Tour de Force that was one of their comedy albums that they made for, let's see, Mercury. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was their label. And one of the things and so I started backing them up on stage, because in those days I was playing guitar and banjo and recorder. And one of the things, so I would learn their tunes, or they'd do some of my stuff or whatnot, and so I just sat between them, behind them, and added a little musicality to what they were doing. And one of the things Tommy liked about me is that I had a sense of when to get out of the way, because you don't want to step on the comedy lines. The music is somewhat secondary to their act. Tom's a great guitar player, and they sing well. Dick really sings well, and Tommy can too. Their harmonies and things are sophisticated. Tommy is a really great guitar player, more than you might realize. He plays a lot of nice jazz chords and is a better guitarist than people might want to assume, but he really is. And So I consequently got to see them put material together, just hanging out in the dressing room and in the airports, and them talking about it and this and that. And so I got schooled in writing comedy for them by being on the road with them. And when and that was in '65, and in '66 I actually hooked up with Roger Miller to write his TV show. And so I got some exposure in what writing for television was all about through Roger. And the Smothers Brothers show came up in November of '66, and so not only was I into writing stuff for the Smothers Brothers, but I now knew how to develop things for television, for sketches and musical comedy routines. So that's how I got involved with the Smothers Brothers.
I guess
still talk to them. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you continue. It's fine.
I was just going to say, and we've had a lifelong relationship since then, and I stay in touch all the time, and they're on the road a lot. Tommy really likes to play in front of live audiences, so they're out playing all kinds of live gigs. That's what they like, and don't pursue the recording industry. They haven't done that for years, and they finally gave up on TV, I think, because it just uses up your material. So, I mean, you can spend years developing a piece of material, and television just uses all that up. And they fortunately had a huge body of work to draw from because of their albums and things they worked up in their acts. So, but it's labor intensive, and you get tired. He got tired of the censorship battles and all of the trying to figure it all out. And one of Tommy's big problems was that he wanted to be involved in every aspect of it: the costuming, the lighting, the makeup, the everything possible. And so he would wear himself out taking care of every single aspect of the show and overseeing all that stuff. Not that he didn't trust the other people; he just was interested in having it be a cohesive work. And so the show was kicked off the air in April of '69, and I had already gone on to my solo career before that, but I was still kind of participating in the show when I could. And let's see, we got up through about '66. Let's see, in '67 I was doing my art projects. I did a thing about the bus, and then I did my sunflower, and the show that
Hello.
the second season we're back exact date, but somewhere in August of '67 I started writing Classical Gas, and the show had already started up, so I was still kind of working it out and writing comedy for the show. So I'd work on a piece, burn out or reach an impasse, and pick up the guitar and play it for 30 or 40 minutes or something like that, and then go back to writing comedy. So the Classical Gas was intermingled among writing things for... I'd have to look up who was on that show, but I might be able to... I'd have to get off the phone to find that list. But anyway, so I'd write a comedy bit and or an idea or whatever, and then I'd pick up the guitar and work on Classical Gas, some little section of it for a little bit, and so it was actually written while out on the show there at CBS, pretty much. And you really kind of consumed. I must have had it fairly well written because I made a demo of it in September of '67, and didn't have the ending on it yet. But anyway, somewhere in about a year before I recorded it, or before it was a hit, I was working on it.
Have you ever pondered how your career may have turned out if you'd never written Classical Gas?
Say this again.
Have
I
you
couldn't hear you for a second.
pondered how your career may have turned out had you never written Classical Gas?
Well, I mean, certainly it's it's my claim to fame, and I I don't know, I don't know what direction I would have gone in if that hadn't happened. I'm glad I stayed with music because, like I say, it's more abstract and just aspects of it that I really like. Well, one of the things I like about music is that in the world of authors and art, it seems like there's always this competitive thing going on with different people. But in music, everyone in the band wants you to do well because they think of it as a group effort. And so, if you're not the most skilled player or singer or whatnot, they still, do their best to make you come off as well as possible. And so that's really a great aspect of music, I think, is that the people involved all want you to do well.
That's very true. Yeah.
Other fields, like I say, being an author, that's like there seems like there's this whole one-upsmanship going on all the time that isn't very attractive compared to music, anyway.
It's Classical Gas. It's certainly a piece of music that's taken on a life of its own over the years, and it's been covered by so many other people. Do you have a particular favourite version that somebody else has done?
Well, they're all fascinating. They're all fascinating because they just, it's like a kid of yours that goes out in the world and comes back to you with things. It's gone through someone else's gauntlet, and man, it's a transformed piece of music. And so, from that standpoint, it's amazing how they make it their own. And a lot of people want to play it exactly like I play it, which is fine because that's what a composer intends to a certain degree. But there are people who stay true to what it's all about, but make it their own, like Tommy Emmanuel's version. He's got a lot of his ideas in it, but it still is Classical Gas, and it's one of the most amazing versions of it of all. And because he's probably the world's greatest guitar player in one sense right now, and he's really a great guy too. I met him in Nashville at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society thing they have every summer. It's in July generally, and he's a big star there, and man, it's just solid music for about 3 days. 500 guitar players descend on Nashville at this one hotel, and there's concerts all day long, and people are selling guitars and books and CDs and doing workshops, a lot of workshops, and hanging out in the little groups and playing and jamming. It's just phenomenal. It's really a great thing. And so that's where I met him and stay in touch with. He's quite busy, but if I need to get in touch with him, he's very generous about getting back, and I always get in touch with him. So I would say that Classical Gas has really enlarged my circle of friends in a fantastic way.
I don't know if you're aware of it. There's a busker here in Melbourne, Australia, who has Classical Gas as his entire repertoire. That's all he plays, continuous.
Really? I didn't know that. I love busker music, man. I mean, buskers. They're just. We even booked some of them from London on the show. They were so great, and I can't remember their names. I'd have to look that up too. But they were. The skiffle groups and the buskers, all those were such great music and really talented people. That would be fascinating to find out who this guy is.
As soon as he stops, as soon as he gets to the end, he just goes back and starts again.
Yeah. Well, I can almost say the same for me. Well, not exactly. I mean, what I find is that musicians are kind of like watchmakers. They like to get inside a tune and see how it's built and learn it. And these days, I tend, if I'm getting ready for a concert or a gig, I tend not to practice what's going to be in the show too far in advance, so I'll arrange something or learn something new, and then my chops are up, and then when it comes time for the show, I can just concentrate on remembering the details of the arrangements and stuff and the lyrics and whatnot. But I really love to get in and work on some tunes. And I do a lot of comedy things like, let's see, recently I did an arrangement of Danny Boy, and I'm working with a harp guitarist named John Doan now, and boy, is he a great musician. So we're putting together a quartet of John Doan on harp guitar, and me on classical, and Martin, and I'm singing, and I have a keyboard player who plays synth or piano, and a bass player named Mark Schneider, and just I would say my act is made out of folk music and pop music and country music and my instrumental compositions, and of course the harp guitar adds an element that's just a complete surprise to everybody. And let's see, boy, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
I think we covered it. I think you're right there. That's fine. You're celebrating the 40th
I'm
anniversary.
sorry?
You're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Classical Gas this year, and going on a major.
Yeah, and it's just starting. It's just kind of starting. I played a couple of gigs this year, not too much. John and I played a folk festival in January in Florida, and I played a concert in Bend, Oregon, which is about 100 miles from me. And then I played a concert in a little town called Oak Ridge, Oregon, where I grew up, in April. And I don't have anything in May, but I'm working on charts and things like that. And then nothing in June, so I'm still working on various stuff. But in July, I'm going to play the Canadian Guitar Festival that takes place in, I think, Kingston, Ontario, kind of in the Ottawa, Ontario, Canada region. And so that's in July, and then in August I'm going to play a dinner theater in Houston, and then in September it's called the Big Top Chautauqua, which is an outdoor tent type gig in Bayfield, Wisconsin. And then I'm going to do a booking conference as a keynote speaker in October. I don't have anything in November lined up, but I'm going to play 2 Christmas shows with orchestra and about a 300 voice choir in December. So things are filling in, and I really like to. I don't have a cookie cutter approach to concerts, so every concert I sort of customize it for the event and learn new things and bring old things back and whatnot. And especially Christmas is like hauling out your old ornaments and dusting them off and hanging them back up again. So it's great to get back into all that body of work of Christmas music, and I learned a lot of Christmas songs. I played, I think it was like 21 concerts with orchestra and choirs and other guests, and we covered something like 130 or 40 different pieces of Christmas music in the process of doing these shows. So, not that I played all of them, because some of that is what the choirs sang, but I really like the idea that you get involved in things that force you to internalize them, to learn them. And Christmas music is really, really great because you kind of annotate yourself with past generations in one sense, and it's everything. It's classical, it's folk, it's traditional. It's everything you can imagine. It's blues, it's jazz. There's so a lot to choose from, and I'm going to play 2 more Christmas shows this year. One in Eugene, where I live, and one in Roseburg, about 60 miles away. And one of them is with a college, a community college, good music department, and so I'll have to learn their tunes, whatever it is, and they'll have to learn mine. So that's part of Christmas, is you've got to share these experiences.
You've had such a varied career with music and books and writing for television. How important has it been for you to have multiple creative outlets like that?
Well, it's like kind of like cross training. You're the sum total of all of your experiences, and so if you're a musician, that helps your writing, and if you're a writer, that helps your music, and if you're a performer, that helps your music, and so I do some art too. It's kind of conceptual. I'm not so much into drawing and painting, but I've had some major art projects like my bus and the sunflower and those kinds of things, and I was a political activist. I was an environmentalist, and I did a whole show called Time Rivers Flowing, where every song in it was about water, or most of them were river songs. But I collected about 1,000 pieces of music for that, and ended up picking 40 or so out of that batch to put in the show. And so it's really the idea of putting yourself into a situation where you have to learn things and do a lot of research. So that was the thing I liked about writing for television, is that when the old Roman sketch came up, you had to go back and refresh yourself on Roman history, whatever you were tackling.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun to get the tangent education out of all of it.
Excellent.
All right.
Mason, I'll have to let you go. I've kept you longer than I promised I would, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I got into the old stuff quite a bit. I hope that if you want to cover some other aspect of classical gas, these other people who recorded or anything, call me back and we'll take this up again.
No problem. No, it's fantastic. Much appreciated, and congratulations on a great career to date. And we're sure plenty more to come.
Hey, I want to say one other thing that people don't know about.
Oh, yes, please do.
All right?
Yeah.
Got a second?
Absolutely.
In 1964, when I was living in L.A., I became friends with one of Australia's most beautiful actresses, Victoria Shaw.
Uh-huh.
Know her?
Yes.
Do you know about her?
Well, I'm no expert, yes? But go ahead, yeah.
Well, anyway, look her up. Victoria Shaw, and she was in many, many movies. She was married to Roger Smith, 77 Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
And boy, it was just stunning to be around her, because she was so not only beautiful but smart and fun, and it was like and she loved Australia and talked about it all the time, and so I got a lot of info about Australia from someone who was from there, and she unfortunately died, I guess, back in the 70s. I had to look that up too. But she went back to Australia for her final days, and unfortunately I didn't get to see her in those final days. But she was just an amazing person in my life, Victoria Shaw.
Wow.
So look her up and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Terrific.
Okay.
Thanks again, Mason. And it'd be great if you could bring that 40th anniversary tour down here. It'd be terrific to see you.
Yeah, I'd like to get down there and meet all those people down there. It's always seemed like a place that is fun, and the arts are going well there. My violinist Hollis Taylor is living there now. Look her up, Hollis Taylor.
Hollis Taylor, okay.
She's the one that went out and recorded, playing with a violin bow, all of the fences across Australia. Do you know about this project?
It sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, she's the one. Hollis Taylor. Look her up too.
I will.
And she and her husband John, I think. They went out and played the fences across Australia. And she's got a CD and there's a book, and it'd be great to feature her, boy, because she is not only a great musician and composer, but she's beautiful too, and a fine artist. And so you should check out Hollis Taylor.
Hollis Taylor. Okay.
Okay.
We'll do. Thanks again, Mason.
Okay.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.